Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I'm filming a video that's making me feel a little bit nostalgic. So I am filming the mid-year book freakout tag. This was the third ever book video that I filmed back when I first had my book content on this channel. Then I very soon after that video ended up moving it to my book channel and then moved stuff back here. And this was the first book video I filmed that was like a proper sit down video. So yeah, I'm feeling very nostalgic for filming this one and can't believe it's been a year of filming book content. I've read so many books in that time, it's been great. So today is the mid-year book freakout tag. If you don't know what that is, this is where people who make book content just sort of check in mid-year about how their reading is going so far, stuff they're loving, stuff they've not loved, and what they're kind of hoping for the second part of the year. I will have all of the prompts in the description down below in case you want to make any of this content yourself or you just want to skip to certain parts of the video. I've read 50 books so far this year, which is just incredible. I know that there are people that read a lot more than that, but aiming for 100 books for me this year was a real challenge. And yes, I've listened to some of those on audio, and yes, I've read some of those as graphic novels and manga, but even to hit 50 books in the midway point of the year is just so exciting. I used to read a lot of books when I was younger, and then I kind of had a big break from reading. I've come back to reading in the last year or so, and it's just been so great to be able to get back into this. I am somebody who is naturally quite competitive with myself, and so setting myself the challenge of reading 100 books in 2023 is a big ask. I read 55 books I think last year, so we are like effectively doubling. And I do listen to audiobooks, I do read graphic novels and mangas, and I do count those. I would absolutely count novellas in this list as well. So this is just a reminder that like your however many books you read in the year, 1,000, okay, that would be too many, but you get what I mean. These can be of any length. Don't let anybody tell you it doesn't count. I've had a conversation with somebody recently who was really rude that audiobooks don't count. They do count. This is your challenge. I have counted those, so we've got a bit of a range of stuff this year. Most of the books that I've selected for these prompts are kind of novels rather than graphic novels and stuff, but I will talk about some of my graphic novels because I love them. So first up we have favourite book, obviously the really good one to start with, and I have only given like 4 books 5 stars this year. I'm a very stingy 5-star giver, but I feel like this one is an obvious choice for me for my 5-star, and I've decided to go with Raven by Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. Cami writes the book, Gabriel does the art. This is a graphic novel and it is an absolutely stunning one. This is a revamp of the Teen Titans, who are some teenage superheroes by DC. And I have watched some Teen Titans stuff before. My brother and I used to watch a cartoon, either on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. So I have, I guess, a small reference point to the Teen Titans, but to be honest, not a lot. I don't remember it that well. And this one is the first one in the series with Raven. Raven has something happen sort of right at the beginning, a real sort of tragedy, and Raven gets really bad amnesia. She doesn't remember anything about her previous life, and this one is about her trying to settle into living with a new family, though they are related to her, but kind of settling in with some relatives who she doesn't know, settling into a new school, and there's like a lot that she's dealing with, as well as figuring out, it turns out she actually has powers. And she's trying to decide what she's going to do about that. And Raven's powers in particular are very scary for somebody to suddenly wake up and realize they have. I just felt like this book was handled so well. Raven is really going through some stuff, but the revamped backstory that Cami has come up with in this one really give some real understanding to, like, Raven is kind of always known as like a bit sarky, a bit grumpy. You really understand why when you read this one. I just really enjoy that backstory. I also think it's really been revamped into a newer generation. It's much more diverse. They have introduced some new storylines, which I think gives some more context as well. I don't think it's perfect in that regard, but I definitely think it's improved. The art is just absolutely gorgeous as well. It's a really monochrome color scheme that then has splashes of purple, which is Raven's color throughout. And each of the Titans has a colorway, I guess. So each of the books is in their color scheme, which is just, oh, it's so beautiful. It's such a joyous read. I flew through the story whilst also being obsessed with the art. I really loved it. I have read all 4 of the novels in this series so far this year, and no others have been released. So I'm completely up to date with this series because I've loved it so much. I love number 1 and number 3 the most. Number 2 and number 4, which are admittedly following different characters, I didn't love as much. So I'm not saying all of them are made equal, but I am still so interested in where the story goes from here. I couldn't recommend this enough. I don't think you need to be really invested in superheroes. I do like superhero stuff. I'm a Marvel person really more than a DC, but I think that if you appreciate stunning art and you like sort of teenage characters and getting in their heads, I think this is an enjoyable read. So yeah, definitely my favourite read of the year so far. The next category is favourite sequel, and there are a couple that I could have gone for this, but I've decided to go for Hang the Moon by Alexandria Belfleur. This is a trilogy, and I've read the whole of the trilogy in 2023 as well, so we're on a good start for the first 2 books in this video. So this is, I would almost say it's like modern day Friends, the TV show. So because we have a couple in each of the books, but by the end of the 3rd book, we've got this kind of found family of 6 people. We've got some siblings in here. We've got some like friends from back home. So, you know, it does, I think, kind of link back in a way. But this is a LGBTQ plus series. So the 1st and the 3rd are sapphic. This one, we have a bi character in it. And I didn't love the 1st and 3rd. We'll talk about that more in a second, but I really, really enjoyed this one predominantly because of Brendan. So in this one, we have Brendan, who is Darcy from the first one's brother, and we have Annie, who is Darcy's best friend. Annie comes to stay with Darcy she wants to break some big news to her in person, but Darcy happens to be on holiday, and so Brendan offers to look after her and show her around Seattle. He realises that Annie has completely fallen out of love with love, and Brendan runs a dating app, so he loves love, and he decides he wants to show Annie that love can still exist. He has been in love with Annie like his whole life, and so there is an element of second chance romance in here. Brendan is just so lovable, and I've said this many times on my channel before, so I won't go on about it too much, but I think there are too many books out there that encourage people that going after a bad boy and changing them is like realistic and also healthy, and I don't think either of those things are necessarily true. And you know, I'm really lucky to be with a kind of cinnamon roll person, but it took me a few failed relationships to get there, and I just wish that it was more in the media that people should want to be with people like Brendan, who just really want the best for you, who are going to look after you. And I really loved how this book did that. I just think it was such a good story. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think for favourite sequel, this is probably the most obvious choice for me. So on that note, the next category is your biggest disappointment, and I've got a couple of options for this. One I thought I would include here is Written in the Stars, which is the first in this series. And I don't think it's necessarily the biggest disappointment of my whole life. Like, I gave it 3 stars, but I just didn't love this story as much as I thought I would, and I'm obsessed with the cover. Like, I love this cover so much, and I was so excited to read this. But there was something about Darcy and Elle that I just didn't feel worked for me, which is disappointing because now knowing Darcy and Elle so much more through the 2nd and 3rd book, I think Darcy in particular becomes so much more likeable in the 2nd and 3rd books. And Darcy and Elle's story actually continues, particularly in the 3rd one. And I just felt like I got Darcy so much more than I did in the 1st book. I maybe almost didn't get enough time with her. I did not really believe that Darcy and Elle would have ended up together. So that is always kind of slightly problematic for me if I don't fundamentally believe a couple should be together. So that was real disappointment for me. This one is basically about Darcy and Elle being set up on a date by Brendan, and they have a really terrible time. They agree never to see each other again, but then Elle is trying to get her parents off her back, I think, or she needs a date for something, and Darcy also needs a date for some reason. I don't entirely remember, but there's both some kind of convenient reason as to why they both need a date. And so they, maybe to get Brendan off her back in Darcy's case, and so they agree to fake date, and then they fall in love from there. And I really like fake dating as a trope, so I should have loved this, but yeah, for some reason I think I just didn't believe these 2 people would end up together. But then by the 3rd book, I did feel like I got them. So yeah, it just, unfortunately, this one didn't work for me, and that was disappointing, but I am really glad that I loved Hang the Moon. The other disappointment, which I think is probably a bigger disappointment for me, is Husband Material by Alexis Hall. This is the 2nd in the series that is called London Calling. The first one is Boyfriend Material, and it was absolutely one of my favourite books of 2022. In the first one, we have Luke and Oliver, Luke, Oliver. And I love these two so much in the first book. Luke is really struggling with his mental health. He has a really rocky relationship with his dad, which is really the biggest impact. And his dad is getting a sort of new lease on life and is getting a lot of press in the media. Luke takes that really badly, and so he makes a number of kind of poor decisions that get him put in the tabloids. And he works for a charity as a fundraiser, and loads of the donors say that they're not going to donate until Luke sorts himself out. It's very drastic, but if you can suspend your disbelief for that, you can kind of get past it. And Luke's best friend Britt suggests that he dates her other best friend Oliver, who is a barrister. So it's fake dating, honestly, at its best in the first book, because Luke and Oliver are people I believe should be together. I loved both of them. The mental health rep through both of them, because they both have different mental health challenges, was so well handled. They are so different, but it works. It's so laugh out loud funny. I've never laughed at a book like I laughed at Boyfriend Material. I kind of knew I wasn't going to love this one. I got to the end of Boyfriend Material and I felt like Luke and Oliver's story was kind of done for me. I didn't need a second one, but I decided to go ahead and read this one anyway, because I wanted to have faith that Alexis Hall had done so well with the first one that maybe there was still a story that needed to be told with these two. And I didn't like this one. I didn't like where the story went. I won't spoil it, but I didn't like where the story went. I didn't believe in this outcome for the two of them. I didn't want to read this story. It was still funny, and there were still really funny moments. There's basically 4 weddings that happen over the course of the book, and particularly the wedding of, is it Alex, a guy that Luke works with, who's a really bizarre character anyway. That whole section was very funny, but I didn't need the story that was told through this one, unfortunately. I think we're getting more, and I don't know how I feel about that. I will still absolutely read other books by Alexis Hall. I own like 3 of them, because I feel like Alexis's writing is just so funny and like dry humor that I would really like to read more, but unfortunately I just didn't enjoy this one, and I'm so sad about it. This is the same way I felt about the answer I gave in last year's video was Nick and Charlie, the novella. And it's like disappointing reads of favourite other books is just so heartbreaking. Okay, for biggest surprise, last year I did a biggest surprise good and a biggest surprise bad, but I've decided to just do biggest surprise good this year, but I have 2. So the first one is Set on You by Amy Lee. This is a duology, again, which I've read. Oh no, it's a trilogy, but I have read the 2 books that are out so far, and I'm really excited to read the third one. The reason that this is a big surprise for me is that a booktuber that I follow called Haley in Bookland really, really didn't like this book. And so because she'd spoken about it so much, like she really, really didn't like it, I had convinced myself I wouldn't enjoy it. I really wanted to read it so I could pick up the sequel. But I thought, oh no, I need to read it because it gives you context for the second one. And you do need to read this one. It does give you context for the second one. But I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. This one is following Crystal and what is the guy's name? Scott. So Crystal is a curvy fitness influencer, and she has a run-in at the gym with this guy, Scott. It's an enemies to lovers, not my favourite trope, but I do feel it was handled pretty well. And, you know, her and Scott are kind of fighting, but then one day they make out in the changing rooms. Crystal's so embarrassed, she thinks it's cool, I'm never going to see him again, and then it turns out that their grandparents are getting married, and so they are going to see each other again. And Scott was really likeable, despite it being an enemies to lovers, which is often what I find is the problem with enemies to lovers, is I don't think that the guy is particularly likeable, but Scott is not a bad guy, he is a good guy, and his relationship with Crystal is just really lovely to watch develop. Only kind of thing for me that I didn't love so much about this was some of the way that the like curvy fitness thing was handled, is that there is a whole storyline about Crystal getting really negative comments on social media for being curvy, and I don't really like to read books that are about that, even though I know that they are supposed to be like positively putting forward being curvy. But as a curvy person, I don't actually want to read books about the struggles of curvy people. I just want books to like effortlessly mention that somebody is curvy and it not be a big deal. So yeah, I didn't like that part of this, which is why it wasn't higher than 4 stars for me, but I'm just genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed this book. Other biggest surprise is the Her Royal Spinner series by Rhys Bowen, which I'm listening to on audio. I picked up the first one of these on a complete whim. I don't know if it was free on Audible or I just like took a complete gamble or something, but I was reading the Agatha Raisin series by MC Beaton, and I've talked about this a bit on the channel before, but unfortunately that series is very outdated. It was started like in 1992, so it's like as old as me. And the series has just reached a point of racism that I am not happy with. So I really needed a replacement audiobook, because the disappointment for me with the Agatha Raisin series is that I really love the audiobook narration. They are something I just feel I can pick up and drop, and I don't feel that way with all audiobooks. The way that I listen to my audiobooks is I listen in like 10-minute bursts. So I really wanted a book that I felt I could do the same thing with, and thankfully I discovered the Her Royal Spiners series, because this series is super cozy with a really good audiobook narrator. It's a kind of slightly silly premise. So we have Lady Georgiana, who's like 34th in the line to be queen. So she's obviously never going to be queen. And she is really down on her luck. Everyone thinks she's super wealthy because she's royal family, but she isn't. She ends up needing to move back in with her brother. And after a few days of living with him, discovers the body of a guy who's been trying to buy their house in the bathtub. And so it's about her trying to figure out who did it. And then the second one, I think I've listened to 2 so far. The second one is she's hosting a princess from another country, and while Honey Laura is staying with her, 3 murders happen, and she's kind of realizing that maybe these murders are connected. And they are super cozy. They are very slow to get to the murder and slow to figure out who did it, but it's just a really enjoyable audible experience. Georgiana is a real kind of caricature of a certain type of person, but it's handled in a way that is funny. And yeah, I just really liked it. I really enjoyed the series, and I'm really excited to continue it. I would say it's a kind of like 3 to 4 star reads for me every time, but that is like perfect for audiobook listening. So next up is my new favorite author, and I've decided to go for Amy Lee, because most of the books that I've read this year, I've read from the authors before. So there wasn't necessarily another obvious choice, but I would say there's Amy Lee and then also Rhys Bowen, who wrote the Her Royal Spiners series for reasons I've just explained. Amy Lee writes really good romances. She writes really good characters with really well-rounded backstories. I've really enjoyed the 2 stories I've read, and I'm really interested to read Mel's story in the 3rd one. I think the characters are really interesting, likable, they're easy to read, they're like easy to fly through, with characters that just feel very real. This one in particular has a really real storyline that is hard to read at times, but is handled really well. And I really enjoyed this X's and O's, even more than I enjoyed Set on You, which is to be expected because this one is about a book influencer. So I think I was always going to enjoy this one a bit more, but yeah, I just think I think I would read anything that Amy Lee puts out. So if that's not favourite author, I don't know what is. Okay, so the next one is your fictional crush for this half of the year. And it's so funny watching other booktubers struggle with this one, but I don't struggle with this one. So I actually have 3 who I'm going to mention. So I think my main obvious answer for me was Brendan from Hang the Moon, because Brendan is just, as I say, such a cinnamon roll. He's so my kind of guy. He's so invested in helping Annie fall in love. He really loves Annie, and you really feel that through the pages. And I just was like, if I wasn't with my fiance, I would marry Brendan, you know? I felt like Brendan was just like the perfect book boyfriend for me. I'm really not saying he would be for everybody, because if those of you that like Josh from The Hating Game, Brendan is not for you. Those of you that are a Nick from Heartstopper fan, Brendan is for you. So he is my obvious choice, but I have a couple of other mentions. One is Alex from You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. I really enjoyed this book as well. I gave it 5 stars, and Alex is just a really interesting character because, you know, he's a little bit nerdy, he's a little bit not so good with people, and so I guess that probably reminds me of my fiance a little bit. But he is so invested in Poppy and wanting to be together, and so much more of the relationship problems come from Poppy than come from Alex. And I just really like when a book is writing a character where the guy is less of the issue, you know, it's more like the girl's problems than the guy's problems. So yeah, I really liked Alex. And then my other honorable mention is Kwan from The Heart Principle. I'm going to talk more about this book in a bit, but Kwan is featured in the first 2. So this is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient series. and Kwan is in all three. And I've always liked Kwan. He's really protective of his brothers, he's really funny, but he's been a real ladies man up until the third one. And then in this one we have a total change of storyline for him, and there's just, he goes through some stuff, and he's such a good partner to Anna, such a good partner to Anna, and I just love him in this story. So those are my three. Next up we have newest favourite character, which I found a little bit harder, but I have decided to go with Mia from Front Desk. This is a middle grade by Kelly Yang, and it's loosely based on Kelly's life, about her coming over to America and trying to sort of like settle in, and her family end up running a motel, but it's really complicated. And I just think that Mia was so well written. She was such a likable teenager, but in a believable way, where she made mistakes and had to own up to them. And I just thought this story was really well written. I'm really interested to see where it goes from here. And so whilst I think I have loved many characters this year, and like I probably could have gone for like Raven or potentially Beast Boy as part of this, like I wanted to really showcase Mia, because you know, I understand that middle grades are not for adult readers, but I think that adults and kids alike could enjoy Front Desk, so I felt like Mia deserved her moment. Okay, the next category is book that made you cry, and I am going to assume I cried at this. I am a bit of a crier at books, but I couldn't really remember crying at any of these. Like last year I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I like really remember sobbing, and I don't really remember sobbing through any of these, but I'm gonna make the guess that I cried in The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. So let me talk a little bit more about the story of this one. So each of these stories is following a relation, and in this one it's Kwan, so we kind of know Kwan from the previous two. But the book mostly focuses on Anna. It's a professional violinist, but she has basically a kind of mental breakdown following a tour that she's supposed to go on, and she's not coping with that very well at all. Her boyfriend is clearly not somebody she's actually particularly attracted to, but kind of thinks she should be. They don't have a sex life that she's particularly enjoying. She sort of has to force herself to have sex with him. And he decides that he wants to take some time apart to go and basically sleep around, and then he'll come back to her. And she allows him to do this because she doesn't know how to vocalize that she's unhappy with that. But she thinks, right, I'm going to show him, and I'm going to have a one-night stand to prove that I can do it too. And that ends up being Kwan, who has taken a break from the dating scene for reasons I won't go into, but please look up the trigger warnings. So they end up meeting. They don't have a one-night stand because actually neither of them want a one-night stand. And then it's about those two getting together. But it is much more about Anna has some illness in her family, and this book is mostly about that. The relationship is really like a secondary storyline. The other two I would consider romances. I thought Quiz Quotient was fine. I gave that one 3 stars. I really enjoyed the second one, The Bride Test. I gave that 4 stars. This one is not a romance in the way that those two are. This one, like, there's barely any sex in it. A lot of this is actually about Anna figuring out why the way she thinks about certain things are that way. So there is some diagnosis that happens through this. There's counselling, therapy that happens through this. Both of them are dealing with health situations that are really challenging. And I felt that it was just an incredibly raw and honest perception of what it is like to deal with having ill family members. It is such a difficult book, but the thing is, everyone said it broke them, and I don't remember it breaking me. I just remember it was incredibly well written. So I'm assuming I probably cried because it's a challenging read. So I'm going to assume I cried even though I don't really remember it. But if I haven't cried at anything, this would have been the one I cried at. So this is not for everybody. I think a lot of people didn't really like this one. They felt it was really different to the other two in the series. As I say, I wasn't obsessed with the first one, so I did enjoy the second one. This one is different, but I think it has its place. And if you don't necessarily want to read smutty romance and you would rather read contemporary with a romance storyline, you might enjoy this. Next up, we have a book that made you happy. So the flip side, and I've decided to go for I Think Our Son Is Gay by Akura. This is about Hiroki, who is gay but doesn't know it, and his mum Tomoko realizing he's gay but not knowing how to address that with him because they live in a culture where people are not really able to say they are gay. And it's very cozy. It's a very easy read. They're very short. I've read the first 2 in this series so far. And yeah, I just think they're a fun read because the mum, Tomoko, is so likable. She clearly loves Hiroki so much. And Hiroki has these really funny outbursts to sort of anything that might hint at him being gay. But really what makes me happy is Yuri. In fact, I maybe should have gone for Yuri for favourite character because Yuri is just, he's so funny. He's the little brother. He's so deadpan and witty and older than his years, and I just love him so much. So yeah, I really like this. I recommended this as part of my if you like Heartstopper you might like this. I think that there's definitely elements of this that are similar to Heartstopper, and if you really like Tori in Heartstopper, I think you would really like this because Yuri is so similar. Next up we have a new release you want to read but haven't yet. So the 3 that I want to read, none of which I own. Some of them are out already. I think 2 of them, well, technically I think all 3 of them are out already. So first up we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. So I'm sure you've heard of Ali Hazelwood, but if you haven't, Ali writes STEM romance novels, basically. I've read all of Ali Hazelwood's books. The Love Hypothesis was one of my favourite books of last year. I really, really enjoyed that one. Then I read Love on the Brain, and I really disliked Love on the Brain. And then earlier this year, I read the 3 STEMinist novellas, and I roughly enjoyed the 3 novellas. I don't think they were as good as Love Hypothesis, but I did enjoy them. So I don't really know what way Love Theoretically will go. My main issue with Ali Hazelwood is that she writes characters that, like women, that are really small and skinny. And that's fine. There are many women that are slim and small. But every single one of her characters is, other than I think one of them is tall in the novella series. But it's like, it's mentioned so many times, it's almost like the only thing about them. And it really dominates the sex scenes. It just makes the books a lot less likable. And so I managed to look over that in Love Hypothesis, but I really struggled to overlook that in Love on the Brain because B was a much less likable character to me than Olive. So we will see what I think of Love Theoretically, but I do need to get my hands on that. Next up is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I have loved all of Emily Henry's books. Beach Reading You and Me on Vacation are my favourite too. And I'm sure I will like Happy Place, hopefully anyway, but it's only come out in hardback and I'm not willing to read a romance in hardback. I know that's a bit dramatic, but I just like my romances in paperback. So I'm gonna have to wait until November when the paperback comes out, which is really painful because everyone I follow on YouTube is reading Happy Place right now. So it's very annoying, but it is what it is. And then last up is Lore Olympus Volume 4, because I'm pretty sure that that's out now. And I literally finished Lore Olympus Volume 3 like yesterday. So I'm really keen to get to Volume 4 as well. But yeah, I don't own any of the 3 of them so far, but I will, and I'm sure I will read them this year. Carrying on with in this vein is the release that you are most excited for in the second half of the year, and for me this is Heartstopper 5 by Alice Oseman. I absolutely love Heartstopper. I talk about it all the time, so I won't go on about it, and also everyone else loves Heartstopper, so there's kind of no need to encourage you to read it, but I have like whole videos where I talk about Heartstopper on my channel. But yeah, apparently Heartstopper 5 is not even the last one we're getting. I thought it was, but Meg with Books said that we are getting a Heartstopper 6 as well next year, so that's really exciting. I am slightly apprehensive in that I think we are approaching the part of the story that is similar to Nick and Charlie, the novella, and I didn't enjoy the novella, but I'm hoping that with the introduction of the art I would enjoy it a bit more, but we'll see how I feel. But anyway, I am obviously super excited to read the next installment of this series. Next category is always a harder one for me, which is favourite adaptation of a book to a TV show or movie. I mostly just watch YouTube, so I couldn't think of an obvious answer for this, but I'm going to mention Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the sequel. Is that what? I don't know what the second one is called. I think the first one is called Into the Spider-Verse, and I can't think what the second one is called. It's called something else, Spider-Verse. But we just saw that last weekend, and it was incredible. What a good film. And it's basically about Miles Morales as Spider-Man rather than Peter Parker. And Miles ends up meeting a load of other Spider-Mans from other Spider-Men from other universes. So it's a kind of multiverse one, and it's so well done. The art is amazing. It's such a good storyline. It's just like constant action. It is fantastic. And you know, I know there's a lot of superhero movies out there, but I really, really, really would recommend this one. And obviously that's based on the like Spider-Man comics. So I figure that it's okay for me to recommend that one, even if I have not read any Spider-Man comics. Then the next one is The Most Beautiful Book You Bought This Year. I bought a lot more beautiful books last year. So like if I had not bought Babel this year, like I could have mentioned Babel, but I have not bought so many beautiful books this year, but I have found two that I could talk about. So the main one I'm going to mention is Heart of the Sun Warrior, which is the sequel to Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. The first book that I have of this, I think, is the prettiest book I own if Babel doesn't take that top slot. This one is equally very pretty. I don't think that they match at all, so that is a real disappointment. And I think the first one is in a colour scheme that I prefer, but I think this one is still absolutely stunning. Let's have a look. Oh, but the end page papers are in purple. That's so random, because that is the colour scheme of the first one. I just find that very odd. But like, look, so pretty. So yeah, I kind of forgotten that this one came in January, so I was like, okay, great, I do have an answer for that one. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Heart of the Sun Warrior. I still haven't read Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I just haven't. And Meg with Books recently read it and really didn't like it, so it's making me a little bit wary given that I own both of them. But I was always going to buy this one because if I spent so much money to get the first one, I wasn't subscribed to Fairy Loot at that point, so I had to pay extra to get that first one. I was like, I'd rather just get the second one from Fairy Loot rather than have to go hunting on the Facebook groups again, and if I don't like it, I'll sell them together. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Or no, not that I'm sure I'll ever sell the first one. And then I also thought I would mention Lore Olympus Volume 3, of that any of the Lore Olympuses could cover for this, because the art of the Lore Olympus series is just like, I don't know, it's just so pretty. It's really different, and I thought for a while that I wasn't going to like the art, but actually I really do. So, I mean, I like all graphic novel art pretty much, but it's like one of the reasons I love graphic novels is because I love graphic novel art, but I thought that I would mention Lore Olympus because if you haven't read Lore Olympus, I'd really recommend it. Lore Olympus is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it's kind of them in the modern day world with like the gods kind of have cell phones, and a lot of it is about kind of who's sleeping with who, and it's like office politics and stuff like that. It's so interesting. I really like the story. It's a real slow burn though. If you don't like slow burns, don't read Lore Olympus. The last main one for this video is books you need to read before the end of the year. The really, really obvious answer for me is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. It was funny though, because I was rewatching last year's one of these videos, and in that one I mentioned Jade War, so like at least we're on the third one now. I am about 200 pages into Jade Legacy. I love this series with everything I have, but it takes me so long to read because I'm often really tired and overwhelmed, and so reading a book that is quite complex always feels a little bit much for me. But also I just don't want to live in a world where I am not reading this series anymore, even though I have so many other fantasy series that I need to read. But I'm just always, I don't know, I just don't want it to end. I also have this real sense of, I don't know, of fear, I think, that maybe I won't love it, or fear that I won't understand it or something. I don't know, but I need to finish this by the end of the year because it will have taken me the entire year to read. The other one for this, which I've just realized I haven't gone and picked up on my shelf, it's somewhere over there, is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I was gonna say Jennifer Saunders and I was like, that's not right. Jennifer Saint. I have been 15% of the way into Ariadne for about a year and a half, and at this point I either need to decide I'm going to finish it or DNF it. So I would also like to finish Ariadne. I do also have some, I have my 23 books in 2023, which I'm just grabbing my reading journal. So I do have a lot of reading journal videos on my channel if you like reading content. If you want to see me talk about the books I've read and all my stats and stuff, I'd recommend my reading journal playlist. But I do have a 23 and 23, so 23 books in 2023 that I would like to read. So I'll tell you what the books that are left on here are that I still need to read. So Skandar and the Unicorn Thief is a middle grade, and it was deemed, like, it was kind of promoted as like the new Harry Potter. So I have the like special edition, like first edition signed edition of that, so that one. Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend is a really, really popular middle grade series. I would like to read that though. Somebody said that I think the latest book in the series has been delayed, but I haven't even read the first one, so that probably wouldn't matter to me. The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman I still haven't read, so I would like to read that because I own the first two. I'm pretty sure I don't own the third one, and the fourth one is coming out later this year. Another one is The Impossible Princess by Kira Dominguez. I love the cover of this one. It gives me real kind of sort of Princess Diaries vibes or something like that. I think I'm really going to enjoy it, and it's quite a short book, so I should definitely read that. The Spanish Love Deception by Eleanor Armes. How is it that I read almost exclusively romance and haven't read like the biggest romance TikTok book? I don't know, it's embarrassing, but it's like 400 pages, such a big commitment. Oh, I've now read that one. So one of the books on here was Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which I have read and did enjoy. I read that recently. So I have all 3 of the books in that series on here. So the second is Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and then the third one is Take a Hint, Danny Brown. These are all by Talia Hibbert. And I enjoyed the first one. I own all 3. It would be easy enough for me to finish up that series. I have Ariadne and Jade Legacy on here as well. I also have Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. I read Serpent and Dove in March last year, and I don't particularly remember what happened, and I kind of put Blood on Honey on here because I thought part of me thinks I will DNF this series, and so it's kind of on here as like a, you know, try and get to that or give up. Then I have Babel. Who do I think I am that I could read all of these books? I don't know. But yeah, obviously Babel by R.F. Kuang was a huge book last year. It was all anybody was talking about last autumn, and it would be good to read that, although Steph Loves felt like the book made her feel really stupid and she gave up on it. And I have a similar reading taste to Steph, and I have a feeling it may make me feel similar. I have Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Celine Tan on here. Makes sense. Spy Family, the first manga in this series. Everyone says this is like super cozy, really enjoyable, and I will probably love it. And I own the first 3. Yeah, the first 3. So it would be good if I could get through those. And then the last one that I haven't already read is The Sad Ghost Club by Lise Meddings. I own all 3 of the books that are out in that series so far. And again, I think that I would really enjoy that. It's a real like cozy book about like ghosts making friends and they're struggling with their mental health, you know? I mean, that's a cat book if ever I heard of one. Last category is your favorite booktubers. So my answers are not going to be totally dissimilar from last year, to be honest. I like the booktubers that I like, but I think the booktuber whose content I am enjoying the most right now is Hannah's Recent Reads. Hannah reads a lot of fantasy romance, and I don't watch a lot of vlogs. I watch a lot of this type of sit down video, but I'm not actually massively into watching vlogs. But I really like Hannah's vlogs. As soon as a Hannah vlog is up, I'm like, I'm going to read that. I love the way she talks about books. So I think right now she is my kind of like real gut number 1. But I also really love Paige from the PM Reader. I'm in Paige's Discord, so definitely a shout out for Paige. She's another one where I would kind of instantly watch her content, although she's making quite a lot of spoiler content right now of books I haven't read, so I can't watch those, but I do really like Paige's content. Of course, then there's like the typical people like Meg with Books, How to Train Your Gavin, JD Ray Reads, Steph Loves, Books Nest, Books Roast. I really enjoy their content as well. And yeah, I still really love book content. I love consuming book content. I'm also just really grateful for everyone who has like friended or followed me on Goodreads this year, because I have a lot more people on there now, and it's really nice to see like my planning friends, the reading that they're doing rather than just kind of watching content creators. So like a big thank you if you have made friends with me on Goodreads. I love looking at what you're reading. I love reading your reviews. I always get book recommendations from you as well. So yeah, I really love that the planning community is very into reading right now. I just love it. And so yeah, on that note, if you haven't friended me or followed me on Goodreads, I would like really love to have you as part of my Goodreads community. So it will be linked down below, so please feel free to follow me over there. It's also the best way to find my kind of most up-to-date reading. I post reviews as soon as I finish books, so if you want to know what I'm actually reading at that time, check me out on Goodreads. So there we have it, a very dodgy, wonky pile of stuff that I have loved or haven't loved so much this year. I really hope that you enjoyed this and getting some insight into my reading. Please comment down below if you have one of these videos. Please let me know, because I would love to watch it. But even if you're not and you are just enjoying some reading this year, it doesn't matter how many books you've read, let me know what your favourite book has been this year. Try and give me a bit of spiel for it, because it's really easy to convince me to put stuff on my TBR, and I would love to have some more books to add to that, because I enjoy a goal I will never attain. You know, it's just fun. So yeah, I would love it if you would let me know what books you've been loving so far this year. I will also have a link in the description to my Instagram, so if you want to check out any more content from me, you can there. But otherwise, I'll see you in my next video.